All right. It is June 1st. For those of you who are listening, this is the second pod of the day. We started the main pod back up after a couple months hiatus. Been spending most of my time on YouTube and doing Instagram interviews over the last 2 months or so, just reaching to people where they are. This person in particular is someone I have known for, I don't know how, maybe a couple years now, like 2, maybe something like that. Yeah. She's a all-star in Atlanta, like legit all-star in the metro Atlanta area. You hit a lot of counties. So like your name rings out in probably all 5 counties. And I don't mean that as like a hyperbole, like her name rings out a lot. When it came to this issue of voting and politics, there was actually only one person and one person only I called. She responded. And so I'm actually glad, because otherwise it would have been me talking for an hour on politics. So
yay for COVID and not having a whole bunch of things. I'm just kidding.
No, that's real though. That's real. But her name is Adrienne White, and I don't even want to put a title on what she does, because she does kind of everything. So she'll explain that to herself. But once again, Adrienne White, superstar of the 5 counties, and she'll introduce who she is.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. So as we said, my name is Adrienne White, and I play in various spaces because I'm a curious person. So by day, I work at Citizens Trust Bank, which is one of 18 Black-owned banks in the United States of America. I do strategy and business development there. And I got into banking because I understand that financial markets move this world, whether we like it or not. And I wanted to understand it, particularly as a Black person, to understand how to take my knowledge and share it with people. One of my core values in life is sharing is caring. So when I know something, I want everybody to know it, so that way they can take what action they feel is appropriate for them. So that's kind of the business world. And I used to work at Coke. I'm a CPA, so that's that. Then, and I'll land in politics. But other stuff that I've done is I helped with a couple of awesome women launch the Atlanta chapter of Black Girls Run. And I will say that really started my ability to organize people. And even though people will probably boil that down to leading an organization of Black women running, for me, it was the ultimate study of leadership. It was the ultimate study of, it was kind of like anthropology to me. Because really you had this culture, like I built a culture of people and really tried to study it and react and proactively kind of get people to, when I say do what I want, what I wanted was for them to run, walk, jog, run to get healthy. And that kind of really taught me the fundamentals of organizing. And the other thing that I kind of do outside of politics is I'm on the board of Grove Park Foundation. And what really inspired that was I saw what happened over in the Old Fourth Ward part of Atlanta. I was on a charter school board, and that was really kind of in the heart of what's that project over there? I forget.
We talking Bedford Pine?
Yeah, Bedford Pine. The charter school was like in the heart of that area. And I think, people go to things with this altruistic, oh, I'm going to save the world view. And that spanked my ass, grew me up in terms of board service, and really taught me a lot about kind of human behavior, and things are not as easy as they appear. But I say all that to say that I really invested a lot of time in being on that board. And that lasted for so long. The charter school actually did not get reapproval.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a whole nother story. But I loved kind of the heart and soul of the Old Fourth Ward, but it was also rough and grimy, don't get me wrong. Yeah. And then Ponce City Market came along, and the culture of the community completely changed almost overnight. And I thought it was quite inequitable. And I wanted to, and then kind of seeing Grove Park, which that is the core fundamental name of the neighborhood, although most people recognize it as like the Bankhead Highway area.
Yeah.
And so obviously that area is about to go through what I hope to be a revitalization and not a gentrification. And the core difference to me is, there's a lot of people that have called that area home for years and years and years. And I want them to have like the first right of refusal if a development comes up or opportunities to remain there as the environment changes. And it will. And we don't necessarily want to stop it. But we want to make sure that the voice and the culture of the community thrives as the area goes through its own revitalization. So that's Grove Park Foundation. And I'm also on the Atlanta Business League board.
See what I'm talking about? She's on everything. So
yeah, that's one of the, I'm getting to politics, I promise.
No, I like this though. Just like flex, just go through the resume.
Well, I think it's important because like, it makes me, it enables me to be a connector and really to see society, community from different perspectives. So Atlanta Business League is the oldest African-American business league or business association in Atlanta. And so you have a lot of giants that are a part of that have been members for years and years and years. The Russells, Moody, Egbert Perry, all these people that some of us young bucks who aspire to be like young and successful look to and say, wow. So, at one point, Atlanta, you really didn't have an option as a Black business person to have power. And so we make sure that they're educated. And I will say with kind of this economic downturn, people who were members, we were having biweekly Zoom sessions with people and business experts to say, hey, if you're applying for a paycheck protection loan, here's what you need. So like, if you're a member, you have the in, you got the knowledge, versus I've talked to many people who just had no idea where to start. And so I think being a part of business associations, especially if you're a Black business person or a business entrepreneur, is really, really important because you can't do anything alone. So that's that. And finally, we're going to land on politics.
Okay.
And I actually kind of directly transitioned out of Black Girls Run into political organizing and what I realized is like everything in politics happens on a Tuesday. You vote on a Tuesday, like all these things happen on Tuesdays. And that was the day that I was leading runs. And at one point I just had to make a choice. I was like, I'm canceling too much on running because my heart really right now is trying to save democracy. At that point, I think this was 2015. Yeah, it was late 2015. And technically, since political cycles really are about 18 months now, we were raising money for the DNC to ultimately fund Hillary and her campaign. And so I kind of just transitioned to that. And I started as a fundraiser for the DNC. And I will say, I do think many people have misconceptions about what the Democratic National Committee, what their purpose and their function is.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah. So I started fundraising for that, and that gave me awesome opportunities. Got to go to the White House for one of their Christmas parties. That was amazing. And that was during Obama.
That's a nice flex.
Yeah. So trust and believe, I really thought that Hillary's going to win. And I had all these like amazing dreams about like going to the White House all the time for Christmas parties. So that didn't happen. And I was also chair of Red Clay Democrats for a while. So Red Clay Democrats is honestly one of my favorite political action committees. And sometimes people put a bad rap on them. But when you talk about state level politics, this is where it's at, if you ask me. And I was very intentional about not getting fully into official party politics. Because of course you have the Democratic Party of Georgia, which I'm an officer of it now, so I'm not dissing it by any chance, any stretch of imagination. But I also had an agenda, and I felt like that agenda could be better served through my work with Red Clay Democrats. And also, I'll give a shout out to Georgia's Win List. I was chair of that for a while, and their mission and their purpose is to focus on getting women elected, Democratic pro-choice women elected to office. And so that's kind of where I got my start, but I really fell in love with Red Clay. And Red Clay focuses on younger Americans. And I think I connected you with Maggie Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought her into Red Clay, and I'm really excited. She's kicking butt there.
Good job.
Yeah. So so they focus on young leaders. And when I first started with Red Clay, honestly, I was kind of the chocolate chip in the cookie.
Okay.
And I'm really comfortable in those type of spaces, but I also recognize that like essentially what they do is they kind of have fun events that, like, I think you came to a Red Clay event.
Yeah, I went to one of them. I don't know where it was.
Yeah. I think it was at Monday Night Brewing.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have fun events that are highly social, but we want politicians to be there, particularly such that like people like you and me can engage with our city, county, and state local electeds and forge real relationships with them, and not just like, oh, let me write a letter to my state legislator, but like, let me know them, let me have their number in my phone, and let me have a drink with them, and kind of see how they act when they're, not down in the well. So I was chair of that. And like I said, when I joined, I loved it at the time, and I loved the mentorship that I got from a lot of my white brothers and sisters. But I also was like, we need to diversify our endorsed slate. And I want to give a shout out to Selena Jadege, and I always mess up her last name, but she's fabulous. She really kind of pushed me to figure out how to endorse people in a more diverse manner. So by the end of it, our endorsed slate had all the colors of the rainbow, different sexual orientations. The dream would be to be a little bit more focused on all the seats across the state, but we did expand a little deeper into Gwinnett, Cobb. So anyway, so I really got to know a lot of state legislators at that point. And when my term as chair came to an end, I was kind of like, all right, I guess I'm done with state politics. And my girlfriend, Pallavi Perkayasa, she gave me a call. She was like, girl, why aren't you running for to be the vice chair of candidate recruitment for the Democratic Party of Georgia? In those two roles, like, my favorite thing and everything I was passionate about was getting amazing people into political office. I am not a policy person, but I have friends who are, and there are people that are extremely passionate and smart, and I want them to be our state leaders. I want them to do the work to put forth laws. And so she was like, candidate recruitment. It's kind of like, wait, I could do this maybe on a statewide scale. That sounds cool. So, technically you have to be elected by the Democratic Party of Georgia members, and that was an interesting experience. And I got elected, and here I am serving. And I will humble brag for the party and the incredible volunteer team that we had. We recruited the largest slate of Democrats to run in the state of Georgia since Reconstruction.
Well, damn.
And,
okay.
Kind of weird because, like, I think over long periods of time, Democrats and Republicans, the notion of a party becomes fluid over like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But still really, really proud because we had incredible people step up and say, hey, I want to run for office in areas like Forsyth County, Cherokee County, Butts County. I mean, I know the state in a whole different manner, which I will say, being a part of the Democratic Party of Georgia in this type of leadership position has given me a whole new appreciation of Georgia, not just Metro Atlanta. Shit is different when you leave the Metro.
Yeah, it really is. It's a different place.
Yeah.
It's like there's Atlanta, then there's Georgia. And those are like two completely different worlds.
It is. And I appreciate and respect it. And I want to learn about it and make sure that people that are running for office in different places who share democratic values, which I boil down to liberty and justice for all,
Okay.
have an opportunity to have a voice for the people in the community. So that's exciting. And post-Trump, people are waking up, so that's very promising.
Yeah. Well, all right. So that is
a lot.
No, that's not even a lot. That's how you introduce yourself. If you're gonna do it, like you need to do that. Put your foot down. Like this is who I am. Like you know, sitting on the couch now. Like I like this. Like come through and set the standard. All right. So we got a lot of stuff to jump into with that. Then I want to jump up to the first and most important thing. I know for right now, people listen to us. We're going to mention what's going on with the riots. Like I'm not gonna stop that. We'll say that towards the end.
Oh yeah.
But right now, the most important thing, I know we're focused on the riots, but seriously, we got an election in Georgia next Tuesday. And so you're here, Adrienne, to help me just walk me through everything that's going on. Cause like, I think most people don't generally know what's happening.
Yeah. So in the state of Georgia, and this year is super weird, right? So I am going to kind of walk down where we are today, but I also want to like set the stage on any other presidential year. It's a little different.
Right.
So in March, we had a presidential primary, and it was supposed to be, quite honestly, this is bad, girl, I can't remember the date, but
it was March 24th. I remember that because I had a documentary. I had a movie coming out on that same day, so I remember that.
Oh, awesome. So March 24th was the last day to vote in the presidential primary. And as y'all remember, it was like, March seems like years ago.
It does.
Yes, but at the time, I think we may have had Bernie and Joe Biden still on the ticket, technically.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and I will kind of give you all a heads up. When you go vote, if you've not yet done it, you will continue to see a whole bunch of people on the ballot. And really what happens, because I'm now a part of this process, is presidential candidates have to essentially ask their party to be on the ballot. And there are all these cutoff dates, and like after a certain date, it freezes in time, even if you draw.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we voted for the people that would be on the ballot, and you know, there's not like debates. It's not like, oh, I don't like this person's values versus that. It's pretty much everybody that has a viable campaign is on the ballot. And so in theory, March 24th, you would have come out to vote for the president that you wanted to go battle against Trump. Right. Now, what happened with COVID is, you know, everybody's not safe. We're going to push back the presidential primary date. Well, we kept pushing it back, and it so happened to coincide with the actual state primary. So the Georgia state primary. And on that ballot, we would have had our U.S. Senate candidates. And so there are 2 U.S. Senate candidates up for election this year. Okay. Senator Isaacson, he resigned, or, you know, his health issues, just, it wasn't a smart idea for him to continue in his leadership. So he resigned, and the governor appointed Kelly Loeffler. So she now serves as one of our U.S. senators. On the other side, we have U.S. Senator Perdue. He is on a natural cycle. So he is up for election. That would have happened anyway. But on the Loeffler side, it's a special election. You will not see her. If you're a Republican, you'll pull a primary ballot, which would be different if you were a Democrat and you pulled your primary ballot. Technically, if you're independent, you can also pull a ballot. And this is a bias, you know, a value, like it's a value statement. You can kind of be wherever you want to be politically, but at this juncture, I would advise you to, if you're a Republican, vote Republican. Like, don't stray, stay on that path. If you are a Democrat and you want to see change, go there. Independence, and again, this is a personal opinion, so take it for what it is. There's not a viable pathway to win, and this is not an election year where we're like playing around. Like, right. I would not be like, oh, I don't agree with one thing, so I'm just going to go out here on a limb and go with a party based on like what I believe, because you're not going to win. That's just Sorry, it's the truth. So you're going to have to pick one or two. That's where we are right now. So anyway, so you're going to pick a Democratic ballot, and quite honestly, I feel bad. I don't know all the candidates on the Democratic ballot for that one, but you got till November. You'll start seeing commercials. I do know that we've got Matt Lieberman as one option and Raphael Warnock as another option. Right now, I would say they are the most viable options on the Democratic ballot, running against Kelly Loeffler. On the other side, we've got people running against Senator Perdue. And personal opinion, I think the most viable options are Teresa Tomlinson, John Ossoff, or Sarah Riggs-Amico. You know, not in my official hat, but as Adrienne White, I have voted for Teresa Tomlinson. She was a mayor of Columbus, Georgia for 2 terms, and really has great experience in government. So I'll move on. So you pull your primary ballot, you'll vote for Senate, then you will have your state senator. And so oftentimes people get confused. I ask people, I'm like, who's your senator? Who's your state senator? And they'll mention Perdue or Kelly Loeffler. And I'm just like, you failed the first test.
Right.
You have a state senator, and in our state, the Georgia General Assembly, there are, I believe, I'm gonna look stupid there. I believe there are 56 senators. And this is people who make really big decisions that impact our life. So let's talk about Medicaid expansion just for a moment. There are many other states who have moved forward with Medicaid expansion, which essentially you as a taxpayer, you pay dollars into a system, and if your state legislature allows it, those dollars come back into your state. Well, in Georgia, our Republican-controlled state legislature won't let those dollars flow back in. And so you have a body of 56 state senators. So you'll see them. Then you will see your state representative. And that is a chamber that has 180 representatives. And yeah, I'll pause there because it almost looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. So here's the thing. 2 things. We're going to actually take a pause. We're going to have another friend of the podcast join us in a second, Michelle Schreiner. We've actually done 2 episodes with Michelle. Michelle has video on.
Hey, I love her.
Yeah, so she's going to be on in a second. But before we get to that, all right, I got to go back, Adrian. 2 things. I think people need to know this. 1, why do we have a Democrat and a Republican ballot?
So this is a primary. And right now, like just by design, right, wrong, or otherwise, it's not going to be decided this election. Right now, this is essentially like, you know, when you play like Mortal Kombat and this ages me, you have to choose who you want to actually go play and go to battle.
Right.
That is what we're doing with a primary.
Got you.
You are saying, this is the tools and the like weapons that I want to use to go to battle against my real opponent.
Gotcha.
So that's what you're doing. And you've got like, technically, kind of anybody can run for any office.
Okay.
There are very few qualifications. Sometimes it's by age and where you live. But I mean, there might be a couple of other like minutia things, but really it's like age and where you live more or less dictates what you can run for. So you can be Joe Schmo off the street, know very little about anything, and run for office. And it is our job, people who vote, to look at the people that we want to pick in our Mortal Kombat and make sure that they can whip some ass.
I feel you. All right. And Mortal Kombat 11 is out now. So like, it's actually really good. So there we go. All right. But one other question, which is back to the issues of Senate. So some people are going to have a question about this. So they're voting to, like you said, to get on to who's going to be in November. So then in November, are both of those Senate seats up again?
Yes.
Okay.
So what will happen is, like I said, on the June 9th primary, so you're voting between now and June 9th, you will only see, again, I'm going to make the assumption that you're a Democrat. So because this is what Adrian is. I pulled my primary ballot and all I saw was the people that are running against Perdue. on the other side, we will not see, basically the Isaacson Loeffler seat is called a jungle primary. And
Gotcha.
it's a
Okay.
jungle primary because it's not really a traditional primary. Like basically everybody who's running for that seat will be on the same ballot, and more than likely we will have a runoff. And in Georgia, this is unlike other states, but in Georgia, the winner has to get 50% plus one of the vote in order to win. And as you can imagine, if you have 3 people, you might have 33%. Everybody can get 33% of the vote. But for this, you don't just need a majority, you need 50% plus one. So it is highly likely that we will see a runoff, and ideally we would see 2 Democrats run because that would guarantee a Democrat, but most likely we will probably see at least 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. I know Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins, it is quite comical to see them go after each other, to out-conservative each other on the Twitter. Although I'm like, Kelly, I just can't believe that you're as conservative as you say you are. Because you were like a donor or owner of a WNBA team. And I just feel like you're around cool people who believe in human rights, and Republicans don't really fuck with human rights. So it's kind of
okay. We're going to take a pause on that one, Adrian.
Sorry.
All right. When we come back, we'll be with friend of the pod, Michelle Schreiner, in 1 second.
Yay!
All right. So we're back, and we're back with friend of the pod, Michelle Schreiner, 2-time MVP, now 3rd time with the pod. So superstar with Adrian White the first time. If you don't know, Michelle is everything to everybody. She's actually a really wonderful person. If you guys haven't already, she is someone who is definitely leading the charge on putting progressive women in office in Atlanta. And she's just all around superstar. She's actually one of my favorite people to talk to about stuff on the pod. So she just said, hey, she made her own, decision. She popped up what she wanted to. So this is how we got Michelle and Adrian here at the same time.
And I will say Michelle and I really got closer through Representative B. Wynn's campaign. And so, Michelle is kick ass. She's like excellent when it comes to keeping things orderly and progressing on campaign. So I'm really excited to see her stepping into a space where she is empowering women to run and win political office.
All right, so I'm gonna ask both of y'all this because sticking on the topic of women in office for a second. It's 2020, and I want y'all to educate me for a second. In terms of Georgia, have we seen an uptick in women running for office and being elected, or has that kind of went down over the last cycle?
Yeah, go for it, Adrian.
It's more than we've seen in a long time. I should have my team run some stats, and we probably will after the primary. But we have more women running this cycle than I think. I'm going to say, it's a little bit of hyperbole, right? But more than we've ever seen before. We have various organizations that have really come to the forefront to focus on recruiting and supporting women. So we have Her Term, which is led by Jane. What's her last name? My bad. Jane, I love you, and I can't remember. Anyway, her name is Jane, and she's kick butt. And then there's Georgia's Win List, which is probably one of the oldest political action committees that really focuses on recruiting and supporting Democratic women. And then Emerge Georgia has come on the scene recently, and Emerge Georgia has Emerge America has a national presence, and recently has really ticked it up and invested in Georgia because these women-led, women-strong organizations know that when women run, they win.
All right, I like that. All right, so I got to ask you all as well. It's 2020, and there's something I want to ask both of you guys about, which is the other thing about the election this upcoming week, which is this notion of everyone's who got a ballot or didn't get a ballot. Like, how does that work? Because some people are still kind of confused.
So you did have to well, actually, no. The Secretary of State did send an absentee ballot application to all active voters. And an active voter is technically somebody who's been voting, I think, for the last 4 years. I mean, don't quote me on law. So if
Right.
the election lawyer comes and is like, she's wrong. But basically, it's at least the last 4 years you've been actively voting, if not in primary or midterm years, then definitely the last presidential year. So we all got these applications. You had to complete your application and fill it out. And then you got your absentee ballot mailed to your house. I think where there's some confusion, anxiety, discomfort is some people have not yet received their absentee ballot in the mail. And that's like as easy as it can be. Like it comes to your house, you fill it out, and then you mail it back, or you can drop it in various drop boxes. And that was so exciting. I thought, have you guys seen a ballot drop box?
No, I haven't seen one. What about you?
Yeah.
There is one so I early voted this past weekend, but I saw one of these drop boxes and I just got so excited. It's so pretty. I'm a dork. But yeah, I got excited. So the concept that like, it looks like a mailbox and you just put your secure ballot in there and you're done, or you can mail it in. So those are options. If you've not yet received your absentee ballot, that's not a problem. I actually ran into a candidate at a coffee shop not too long ago, Michelle who's running for Senate District 56, and ran into her, and she was just like, I haven't gotten my absentee ballot in the mail yet. I'm going to wait until whatever date, and if I don't see it, I'm going to go vote in person. So rest assured that if you did fill out your absentee application and received and have not yet received your ballot, it's okay. You can still go vote in person. There are early voting locations, and I went, and it's safe. The person had like that full screen COVID thing. I wore my mask. People are wearing gloves. Things are well spaced out. So if you want to vote by mail, you should have already applied. If not, definitely go do it.
Okay. And so I got to ask both of you all, which is, so there's this other notion of like, with regards to voting itself, some people, like you, I'm glad you mentioned that, Adrienne, like it's okay if you didn't get it right now, but some people worry like, hey, maybe I didn't get it this time around at all. And am I going to get my ballot in November for the November election, if it comes to that?
Yeah. So this will be a whole nother process.
Wow.
Okay. So you'll apply again. If you would like to vote by mail, you'll essentially apply again for your ballot, because your ballot will be it'll be more or less completely different in November. And there will be a period in which that starts. And I apologize, I don't have the dates memorized or in front of me. But at some point you'll be able to apply for your general election ballot, and it will come in the mail. You can fill it out and send it back. And the website, I'll pull it up before the end of this because I think it's so important for everybody to know this website. Literally, it's called MVP for my voter page, but I like to kind of reframe it as I'm the most valuable voter.
Right.
And I think everybody should check that, because if you did vote by mail, then technically that site will track and show where your application is in the process. So it'll show like you've requested it or it's been counted. So if you did by chance mail in and you're kind of feeling a little anxiety because you're like, oh, I don't know if the dog ate it somewhere, you can check that website to see if the Secretary of State has counted your vote. And if for some reason you get super anxious, you can go vote by vote in person. you just have to, you do have to like certify that you voted elsewhere, and then whatever you mailed in will not count. So, you know, if you've changed your mind between the time that you mail it in and that you go vote in person, it's fine. Whatever you vote in person, that's your vote.
I think you raised an important point, Adrian, about voting next week versus voting in November. And sometimes when people vote, they just think, well, I voted, I'm done with that. And so just as a reminder, and it feels so weird because of the strange times that we're all in with COVID, that we're still in a primary. So we were supposed to have voted last month and things got delayed. So that's why the ballot, to your point, Adrian, about this will be a little different, is we're still selecting people who we want to see in the general.
Mortal Kombat. I kind of made an analogy about it before you jumped on, where like when you log into your Mortal Kombat game, because we all play it every night,
right?
You choose the person that you want to fight, and that's essentially what a primary is. You choose who you want to go fight in this general election battle.
There it is.
You gotta let people know your Twitch name, Adrian.
My Twitch name, my Twitter name, or my Twitch?
She's not gonna let. All right, when she lets everybody knows her Twitch name, then we'll let you guys know as well.
I'm a lady. I don't.
Oh, I have talked to Michelle about this for a minute. So, like, how to do new outreach, right, Michelle? Like, so we talked about this before. So yeah, when is the DNC of Georgia gonna have a Twitch strategy?
What is that?
Y'all don't know what Twitch is?
I mean, I'm still stuck on TikTok myself.
I introduced you to TikTok, which makes me happy.
Nice.
It's that was actually a good time. Like, that was a good time. No, Twitch is a video game streaming system. It's the biggest online gaming platform on the planet. Amazon owns it. So, yeah. But no, it's actually a good, I was going to actually segue into this, which is like voter outreach, which is something I talk to Michelle about all the time. But no, so the reason why you probably want to be on Twitch, Adrian and Michelle, is that Twitch is where you find most of your people under 21 at.
It's say we need you there.
What? Yeah, in Twitch, like, you seriously. And so, and like when you see people talking about Fortnite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time they're playing it on Twitch, or they're playing it on like PlayStation or something. So that's the way to think of it.
Started to consider taking up arms, so maybe I'll start with Fortnite first.
What?
Okay, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not doing it. Yeah, that's offline. We're not even getting into that like, whatsoever. But nah, so like I brought that up because I think, how many months ago was that, Michelle? We talked about TikTok. Like,
feels like 50 years ago, but yeah.
It wasn't that long ago, but it does feel like 50 years ago. Like we still were like in the horse and buggy when I talked to you about this, but it was like, all right, I was asking Michelle about just outreach, and like I was just like pontificating about ways like the DNC should reach out to people. And I want to ask you guys in particular, which is, how has the outreach been just this year alone? Because this year has been 17 years in 5 months. So how has that been, like, trying to reach out to people this year?
You know, I gotta say, this is such a weird year. Mm-hmm. And the momentum that we had, I think there was a lot of momentum. And then back in mid-March of this year, we got hit with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And it just sent so many campaigns reeling in terms of, what do we do now? The shock of it all initially. And then trying to understand what's the appropriate move here. So people were still knocking, for example, when the pandemic was first announced as a pandemic mid-March. And then we started, and this was actually with B's campaign, with B Wynn's campaign, we were still knocking during that time. And then we had voters literally tell us, like, why are you at my door? I am worried about this pandemic. Like, you need to not knock on my door. And so we got the memo, and a lot of other campaigns got the memo too. And so it just, for those campaigns who are more inclined to use grassroots efforts, it's really had a deep impact. And then on top of that, there's been, I mean, I know y'all are keeping up with the numbers. The unemployment numbers are at all-time high. So 40 million plus Americans who have lost their jobs and have sought out unemployment. And so I think it puts campaigns in a really tough position because that's part of a campaign is to fundraise, and that's how you get support to do mailers and whatnot, which are very expensive.
Right.
And so that it's been hard, and maybe Adrienne, you have additional insight in terms of how folks have adjusted. But I think we don't necessarily have a playbook. How do you run a campaign during a pandemic? It's real new.
It has been really tough. And so Craig Walters, he's on staff at the Georgia Democratic Party of Georgia. He leads the Georgia Legislative Victory Fund, and their mission is to win at least 16 seats in the Georgia State House come November, because that gives Democrats a majority. And, I'm not going to share any secrets or anything that isn't just common knowledge, but the DNC has invested money in acquiring phone numbers. So while people may be annoyed that they get texts or calls, the DNC, this apparatus, doesn't do commercials. That is not the function of the DNC to run a commercial. It really is an administrative function. It's not to really influence, particularly pre-primary mode. And that's one key reason why I stayed out of official party politics before now, is because I have an opinion and I like to share it. And I've made some conscious choices to try to only endorse a couple people. Of course, I endorsed Representative B. Wynn for House District 89, and this is all personally, but a person looking at me, they're like, well, how can I tell if you're Adrienne DPG or Adrienne just the person? So I'm thoughtful and considerate of that. But we have invested in, DNC has invested in acquiring phone numbers, so that way we can reach people where they are, which is in their cell phone. We have also, sorry, I'll be down in a moment, babe.
All right.
Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding.
Do your thing.
And so we've DNC invested in phone numbers, and then we, the party, obviously get access to those numbers, and so we do outreach to people. And we've also really turned up phone banking and text banking to people. So right now, if people wanted to be a part of outreach efforts, and here's the thing, people are like, oh, the DNC or Democrats should advertise and market. There's not a budget. If you're not donating, the money ain't there. So I
want to ask about that. All right. So this kind of for both of y'all. All right. So because I'm going to ask you questions or stuff I see on Twitter from people who say things. All right. So this is a paraphrase.
Ooh, that's a whole thing.
That's a segment right there.
That is. All right.
Twitter from people who say things.
There we go right there. All right. So, all right. One of the things is people say the Democrats don't do insert whatever right here. Right. All right. So I want you to kind of take me back again, Adrienne, walking through when people say the Democrats don't have a strategy to engage X, Y, and Z. Walk me through that. What does that mean? When people are...
Yeah, so again, the Democratic Party is a function, whether it's the DNC or the Democratic Party or Georgia, our function, I'm gonna turn the TV off.
Adrienne looks like she's in a horror movie right now. You all can't see this necessarily for the people who are listening, but she's walking in the dark by herself. It's like the beginning of those movies where the black person dies. It's kind of that.
It's this whole Mortal Kombat thing.
We got to get you a Twitch name, you and Michelle. So
I know, figure it out. So I can digitally kick people's butt, and maybe I won't say crazy stuff on social.
No, you're gonna say way more stuff then.
So, okay. Wait, ask the question again.
All right, all right, Michelle, chime in too if you want. All right, when people criticize Democrats for X strategy or whatever strategy it is, walk people through that, how that works.
So yeah, like the Democratic Party of Georgia or the DNC, these are administrative functions, and I don't have all the things that we particularly do in front of me, but like, for example, voter protection is probably one of our biggest investments right now. So that's not something that you quote unquote advertise. And I've seen quote unquote people on Twitter say, why haven't you told so-and-so to get out of this race? And I'm like, no, I refuse to even conceptualize that the DNC or the Democratic Party of Georgia would force people out, because we believe in democracy and the voters have to make their choice. And yes, it does sometimes feel like a distraction when you have several people in a race, but I'm not calling anybody and telling them to get out of a race. That's not my role in my official DPG function. So voter protection is a big thing. Voter contact and voter registration, that's another big thing. So we want to make sure that people know that they get registered to vote, that they know how to vote. Our party works in a manner such that we have county parties. So if you are listening and you're like, hey, I want to get more involved, I would recommend checking out your county party. And I'll be transparent. Sometimes you go to these county parties and weird people are there. I mean,
okay.
And I love my people. I might be weird too. I don't know. But sometimes you find weird people there. But ultimately, I think everybody kind of shares this passionate value of getting people who share values of liberty and justice for all elected. So I say all that to say it's an administrative function and not an advertising function. Advertising often comes by way of candidates, and that's why, you know, people are like, oh, I've got to raise money so I can put out mailers, so I can phone bank, text bank, or get on TV.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I have a candidate right here. Would you like to talk about?
I want to bring your candidate in a second. Just give it a pause. And I want to end it before we go to that. I want Michelle to kind of chime in with if anything she wants to add in on that.
Yeah, to me, just to build on what Adrian has already discussed here, to me, there's another missing piece to this puzzle, and that is the education aspect of it. And so the DNC, you heard Adrian now say a few times that it's an administrative apparatus, right? It's not to educate people on how to be a civic, like a participant in civil discourse. It doesn't necessarily teach you on how to be engaged, not just with voting, but also holding electeds accountable. And just that civic participation, we don't really have the educational tools, those building blocks. We don't really have that in our schools anymore.
Gotcha.
You know, we think about social studies, and we think about, you know, forms of government, and we learn about the history, but we don't really teach our kids, we don't teach students, how do you engage today? And how do you foster that? You know, you're talking about Twitch. I mean, is that what we do to educate, right? Because we're not doing it in the school. So do I need to hop on a PlayStation? You know, that's kind of what.
No, but it's true. I get where you're coming from. And so the person in me is always like, go where the fish are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, y'all both bring up good points about that. And that's something I think people just are generally kind of fed up with, like the status quo. So I see a lot of people throwing like rocks at the DNC, but I'm glad that you guys are talking about how that actually works. But that does leave room for like improvement. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that. So we'll take a pause for 1 second and we'll be right back. All right. So we're back now, and we're back with a new guest. And I like this. We're kind of doing this house party style. People just showing up and coming in and chilling and stuff. Shout out to Adrienne for inviting people, because I definitely did not. So I want to give her a shout out for that one. So we actually have a candidate who's actually running, and I want you all to listen to kind of hear what his platform is and when is he running, and then who he's running against, or rather himself.
Sure.
All right.
Real quick, my name is Kirkland Carden, 16-year resident of Gwinnett County, Duluth, Georgia, former Duluth City Council member, served on the City Council in Duluth, Georgia for just under 3 years. Currently, I'm running for the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners, District 1. So in Gwinnett County, it's a county of 1 million people. We have a county government of 5 commissioners, 4 districts, 1 at large. This year, we're going to have elections for District 1, District 3, and the chairman. And I'm running against no incumbent. All 3 of these seats are open seats. All the incumbents in Gwinnett County are retiring.
Wow.
And why do you think that is?
Oh my God, I just—
Is that like a mic, Adrienne?
Yeah, that's my mic.
She really made a mic. She just made a mic.
Yeah, I'm speaking to a mic. The environment's changed. I mean, I've been here for 16 years. I've seen Gwinnett change at light speed, and the county leadership or the Republican leadership has failed to do a good job to accommodate for that change. They failed to de-align from the national party, so people are voting blindly. D versus R. And then they've done a number of different things on the local level to really, we'll say, turn people off on both sides. So I think a number of the commissioners saw the writing on the wall, said, I'm not getting younger. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to bring some new people in. So Democrats feel really bullish about their odds this year. In 2018, Stacey Abrams won, and won handedly in Gwinnett County, just I think over 56%. And if you look at the different districts, she did phenomenal there. I think they're all blue districts now. So, Democrats are, feeling very bullish. There's a lot of energy and there's a lot of money in the Democratic candidates in Gwinnett County this year.
Okay. All right. And so I want to stick on Gwinnett for a second since you're out there. Adrienne has been like Captain Gwinnett for as long as I've known her about this one. And I want to ask in particular because a lot of people—
Maybe that's her Twitch name.
That's your Twitch name. It's Captain Gwinnett.
There
you go.
I feel like some Gwinnetians would hate on me.
No, you got to do that. You're going to be cussing out some 14-year-old and 26-year-old, but
like,
it's fine.
Just kidding.
I like that though. So I want to ask though, in terms of Gwinnett. So Gwinnett, like you said, is a county of 1 million people. It's like the most diverse county in the United States. Yeah, in the Southeast.
One of the most in the country. One of the most diverse.
Yeah. But it doesn't show up a lot in the national conversation about Atlanta. Atlanta is basically like the city, or sometimes DeKalb, Fulton, but like it never shows up. So like, why should people pay attention to Gwinnett now?
Well, I think part of that is because it's a bedroom community, or it has been treated like one for so many years.
That's what it is for me.
The second biggest county in the state, fastest growing, soon to be the biggest county in the state. And for different reasons, I think it comes down to leadership. When we have these regional issues or situations that pop up, our leadership in Gwinnett, for the most part, is silent. So case in point, what we saw this past weekend with the peaceful protests that turned uncivil or turned into riots. We saw Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms taking point, being aggressive, getting in the media and putting out a message and articulating that message over the duration of several days. This at the same time, we were having events in Gwinnett County, right? We were having people, riot, commit property damage at Sugarloaf Mills, a mall just 4.5 miles away from my house. We had a group of some 300 people out there. So let's compare the two, right? We saw Keisha being a good leader, an aggressive leader, the kind of leader that Georgia needs right now. And here in Gwinnett, I saw nothing, right? Did you?
Nothing.
Exactly. So,
we got a new player.
It's like what you said, you hear about these other metro Atlantic counties stepping up and running point on these issues, but for different reasons. Gwinnett doesn't do that. And I think it goes back to what we said before, is that it's traditionally been viewed as a bedroom community, and that's what they view themselves as. But at some point, you got to change. I think Gwinnett is having a little bit of identity crisis.
Yes.
It's no longer a suburban community. It's really an urban community. When you have 1 million people in a county, you're not suburban, you're urban. And the sooner you can get past the identity problem, the better you can, then you can work towards that, past that, and find new opportunities. It's like a kid. Once you find yourself and you get down those barriers and you're confident and secure, new opportunities are open for you. Well, I think that's Gwinnett's problem. Just have to get past this little identity crisis, and then from there we can move forward.
All right. Oh, Adrienne, I think you had somebody else trying to get on too. Tiffany, by somebody's name.
What's her last name?
Fannin.
Oh yeah, she just wants.
What happened to that one? She
I think there
popped in,
might
she
be
popped off.
spectators versus like participants.
Okay, because I was like, okay, like you just.
I didn't know like if this was like a
I actually like
spectator.
this. I'm gonna do this again. I just want you to start like inviting people randomly. I actually like this. This is fun.
I was like, because you know me, I'll just post and be like, hey everybody, it's a party.
I like it. I like it. And so I want to ask all y'all now. So you all are all involved in Atlanta politics, and even though you all are super entrenched in Atlanta,
Metro.
Well, I'm saying Atlanta is like
I get what you're saying.
like LA. So,
yeah. That's a good point. We are like LA.
Yeah. So, Metro, Adrian, Atlanta politics. Even though you guys are all, and ladies are all involved with this, it seems to be still like a general disconnect between voters outside of like the election day itself, right? So like people will show up on election day. We've been doing that pretty good the last 3 years in a row, like 16, 17, 18. What do you say to people who say, well, you know, my vote doesn't count because my candidate lost, or my vote doesn't count because we've seen the last couple of years we got close, but we didn't go all the way? Like, what do you say to those people?
You know what I'll say to them? My first election when I ran for city council in 2013, I missed the runoff by 9 votes.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, if I had 9 more friends, I could have been a council member in 2013.
And he was 24 at that point.
25.
25.
But I mean, I really would tell, that's what I tell people is like, dude, in some of these local elections, your vote is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember the same year there was an alcohol vote in Decula, Georgia, and it passed like 88 to 89.
Oh,
It was literally taking people at the bar saying, hey, do y'all want beer? Do y'all want alcohol on Sunday? I mean, people's votes, you may feel it doesn't mean much on the bigger level, but when we're talking about county commission, in the state house, mayor, every vote counts. It's a street fight. You need every single vote.
Yeah, and I will give props to kind of this next generation of Democratic voters. They have changed the game on how they approach voting, and quite frankly, to the peril of older Democrats who don't campaign this way. Like, politics is personal, and what I love about the way people are campaigning now is we're in people's faces. People have to reckon with you, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. And you know, Michelle, I'm sure she has. Well, both of y'all have. We all have examples of canvassing, and which is essentially you have this person you believe in, and you want them to represent you, or you want them to represent the district, and you knock on people's doors, strangers, and you say, hey, my name is Adrienne White, and I'm here to tell you about Kirkland Carden, who's running for Commission District 1. And here are some key things that he believes in. And like, we're generally taught not to talk about politics or religion, but here we are changing what that looks like. And I think in 2016, 18, people really like in Gwinnett, Cobb County, North Fulton, people are like, I'm the only Democrat that lives around here. It's like, no, you're not, because that vote builder, and I can tell you like 15 people on your block are Democrats. So if y'all start to get together, you can really flex your power, and perhaps one of you guys should run for office. I mean, quite honestly, he brought me to one of his friends' houses it was a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I had a brief conversation with her. This is Mary Campbell Blackman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I said, I kind of said, I really received her thought process and what she was saying. And I said, you should run for office. And she was like, no, I won't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, you should really run for office. And, you know, I pressed it a little bit, then left. And then Kirkland has a personal relationship with her. So I was like, Kirkland, ask her again. She's running for office for House District 97 now. So when I tell you, like, politics is personal, it is so personal. And I just love the way we are approaching it now, where we're in people's faces, asking them to vote for us. And I mean, everybody loves an invitation. So like, here's an invitation to vote for somebody that either has personally knocked on your door and asked for your vote. And quite frankly, COVID-19, we're not knocking on doors so much right now. But we are trying to make sure that you have mail or you get a call or a text to ask for your vote personally, because we care about you in the sense that if you've got something you want represented, that's why Kirkland's running. He's got his own thoughts and ideas, but he goes to office, he represents how many people?
In Duluth or on the county commission?
County commission.
It's roughly 250,000 people.
So 250,000 people. Yeah. And any one of them could call him up and say, hey, I don't like the way
recycling
is picked up.
I don't like the way y'all stop recycling glass. And now I'm mad at you.
Yeah. So being elected often is a thankless position because people yell at you. So write your legislator and say thank you for being yelled at all the time.
Oh, word. Okay, I'll do that. Michelle, I got a question for you in particular. All right, so 2020, we're coming up. Actually, I want you to give me an update of something that you told me earlier. First, I got two questions for you. The first was, what was the update? The last time we did our interview, you spoke about the status of Puerto Ricans who were being unfairly treated by the state, having to do basically like a literacy test for the most part. Can you explain what that was and what the status of it is now?
Yeah, so this was from last year, actually, where there was a policy through the Department of Driver Services. I'm sure I'm getting DDS messed up.
No, that was it. That was the right one.
And their policy was to have a number of interview questions to anyone who is submitting a birth certificate from Puerto Rico. That person is tested on their knowledge of the Puerto Rican culture, its history, sports, government. I mean, you name it. It was like a pop quiz of sorts that was completely outdated. So they had questions that were from the 1990s about electeds that are no longer in office, for example. They had trick questions in their interview guide, because what their intent, I suppose, was to determine if you are a real Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I had significant issues just in terms of how they not only disenfranchised people, but honestly arrested people. So there was a guy who lives outside of Savannah. They gave him the test. So he moved from Puerto Rico to Savannah because of Hurricane Maria. And he took this test and he failed. He failed this test. And so they arrested him. They confiscated his ID. He lost his job because he no longer had a driver's license. So this policy was very harmful, right? And so to know that if you fail this test, you could be, in the legal paper, in the document, it said that, that you're a threat, and maybe you're fraudulently providing ID. So I think the part of their thinking was, there's illegal immigrants that are trying to get into the country and trying to pretend they're Puerto Rican or something like that.
Right.
So a big problem in terms of the impact that it would have on Georgians across the state. And so the good news is that justice has been served. This policy has been banned. People have been fired for even creating this policy. The person, Kenneth Gonzalez, he got his license back. I believe they paid retribution. So, I mean, justice was served in that regard too. And so my license is up in October, so they had better not replace it with some other bad policy, or you better believe I'll let you know.
Right. I don't want to be in your path.
But
I
yeah.
like that. Okay. And then another question I have.
That was so powerful.
Michelle was fiery about that. Like when we first talked, she was fiery, like full fire. but no, now I got to also ask you, which is, all right, so 2020, and maybe Michelle, you can talk to the Sanaa. If you can't, it's cool. I understand.
Sure.
But like, is there anything going on right now with like reaching or making new inroads with Latino voters in Georgia at all?
It's a great question. I don't have personal knowledge of any strategies in terms
Okay.
of targeting that demographic per se. What I can tell you is that I know over the years there's been greater efforts at reaching diverse communities, and part of it too, King, when we talk about reaching people where they're at, part of it is just even acknowledging the different languages. And it's not just a simple translation from English to Spanish or Filipino, whatever other languages are out there. There's a sense of authenticity that comes with it. There's a sense of, do you understand the issues I'm facing, right? There's a number of issues that have been at play for some time now. So think about, in terms of immigration, think about ICE, think about, Kirkland, I'm sure, can speak to how the impacts from ICE and even with the sheriff's race, how there's repercussions in terms of issues that are affecting people around our area. And so are you connecting with people in terms of issues that really matter to them? And I think that kind of goes back to your previous question about outreach and at the local level. I feel like people are starting to see that connection. I think people are starting to realize like this stuff really is affecting me and people I know, and this is happening in my backyard, and there's something I can do about it, and people like Kirkland can help, right? So I don't think when I was a high school student, are you kidding me? I was so clueless. But I look at the changes over the past 25 plus years now, and I do see younger people being a little bit more involved than I've ever seen it when I was a kid. So to give you another example, and this is a few years old now, but I think it's a relevant one still, just the shooting at the high school. I never had to deal with that. Do you know what I mean? And so like these are issues when you see kids who have been affected by terrible policies, say, I'm going to take a stand and I'm going to go talk to my representatives. And I think part of the ask here, King, is sometimes when you try one time, you might not get the result you're looking for. But to Kirkland, Kirkland's a perfect testament to this. You don't give up. You keep trying and you try it again, and you get your 9 friends, or you get your 89 friends, or you get, you know what I mean? You start getting out there, and before long, your voice cannot be ignored. And so part of it is that, being able to organize a little bit, being able, even Adrienne said this, is like, you're not the only person on your block with this particular viewpoint. Are you talking? Are you connecting with people? And then like start to organize, because you cannot be ignored once those voices rise up. And I think that's part of what we're seeing today with the protests. You're starting to see people say enough is enough. At what point, how many more people have to suffer and die before we do something about this? So I think the wake-up calls are coming. I think they're, to a certain extent, they are there. And I mean, I'm a little, on one hand, it's empowering, and that's what we want. That's part of a democracy. And then on the flip, I was trying to catch up with what the president said about 2 hours ago. Don't do that, right?
Nah, I wouldn't, but
Yeah.
Listen.
It's very concerning.
Yeah. And you because you brought it up, I'm just going to jump right into it, which is no one's living under the rock at this point. We know that there's a real sense of dread and a real sense of confusion as a result of the riots that are going on across the U.S. I want to be clear to you all, this is the first time the U.S. has had a widespread riot since the 92 riots in Rodney King, and this is the third large riot in 50 years. So MLK, when he got killed in 1968, 92 of Rodney King and now in 2020, we haven't had this type of like wide scale rioting and looting, period. And so a lot of people are really confused and a lot of people are really scared. And so I'm going to ask all three of you all right now, aside from the politics of it, aside of like what you all do and how people know you, how do you all feel about what's going on?
I feel what we're seeing right now, it's the perfect storm. There's so many different factors going on at once that have a lot of people venting their frustration. You have a time where there are 40 million Americans that are unemployed. Okay. Just last week, we had 2.1 million Americans file for unemployment insurance. So there's a lot of young and restless people, and not so young people just sitting idle, right? Just has a lot of time on their hands. And the people who do have a job still, they're sitting at home in their home office and they have a lot of time to digest what's going on. You have a public health pandemic that's claimed over 100,000 lives, people who died before their time. All this going on while we're seeing unarmed African Americans die on cell phone footage. I think it's just so much going on at once that we probably never had this combination as a country. These type of issues all at once, and I think it's just built up. And here's the scary thing: we're moving into the summer seasons, right?
Yeah.
So I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio. And when you get to your summer seasons where you see increased rain, which we have in Georgia, seen a lot of rain, you're now going to see some of the effects of global warming take place, right? So you'll see displacement in your Midwest and Southern communities, right? Where we're actually seeing some of this racial tension and rioting take place. So you're going to put displacement in an already volatile environment. I just think it's one of those things where we're witnessing the perfect storm take place.
Yeah, that was because we talked about this a little bit. I think it was even last night.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out, like, so my previous job was the vice president of finance at this National Center for Civil and Human Rights, and I was there between 2015 and 2017, and we were kind of a behind the scenes coordinator, organizer of a march that came about in 2016. It was July 2016 because of the shootings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And it started as a protest with, I think, about like 8,000 people and ended with maybe 30,000 people. And, you know, after that, the center hosted like Jovita Moore and the police chief, all these things on TV about like, hey, where are we? Leadership Atlanta hosted something. And I was just having this deep moment of reflection today of like, we did all these things back then. Granted, we didn't have the added element of COVID and this unemployment. And what really, really, really disturbs me and makes me scared is that in 2024, we will be here again, because I don't necessarily like the policing, and this is not to say that this is not to make any excuses, but it's inherently violent, right? So like you have somebody committing a crime, and when you approach them, it's you or them oftentimes, and hopefully police are trained to de-escalate a situation, and there's no excuse for, once a person is restrained, that should be end of story. They're restrained. You don't continue to apply pressure. So no excuse there. But policing, there will be deaths. That's just going to be a part of it, because you have a gun. The only purpose of a gun is to maim, disable, or kill another living creature. That's the only purpose of that thing. So something's going to die. And I think I accept that as a part of policing. And so the question becomes like, what will be different from here forward? Will we make people who apply to be police be not racist? No. Like, I don't know how your mother and father raised you. And many of us, like, even if you have good questioning and good like tests beforehand, who knows? I don't know, there might be bias, or you could live in a town where it's like 80% white, 20% black, and a black person does something and you get crunk and you kill them. Like, all these things will continue to exist, and I accept that. So the question to me is not so much how do we prevent that, but like, how do we hold people accountable? And that's what has to change. And, you know, I was telling him I have ignorances around like how Gwinnett County Police precinct, how they're trained, you know, the disposition of the DA and prosecutor in Gwinnett County. I don't know the dispositions of the judges here. And so I have this huge blind spot in the criminal justice system in my own city. And like I said, I accept the fact that police will probably engage in situations where they will take other people's lives. And to me, it's what's the accountability mechanism there? And if we don't know it, then I encourage everybody to understand that Obama's 2015 21st Century Policing Task Force implementation guide, what I'd like to see is, as a citizen, I just want to know, like, are there 10 questions from there where I can call my police department? There are 18,000 police departments in this country. So for me to be mad and try to go against Gwinnett cops for something that happens in Minnesota, I feel is a little disproportionate, quite frankly. I don't know, maybe Minnesota doesn't have the same training, the same laws, the same policies. Maybe they suck. I don't know. But I at least want to take responsibility for what's going on in Gwinnett. And that's one thing that I think everybody needs to do, no matter where they live, is know their local jurisdiction, what that looks like.
I mean, I feel like where you started from, Adrienne, like you started with this, like a presupposition that if given that the police, there's some sort of inherent violence, right? But given that your starting place was if there's someone who did something wrong, okay? And I feel like as part of a just society, there's policing to protect people. But what I don't see, whether it's Minneapolis, New York, Atlanta, LA, I mean, I don't think what happened in Minneapolis is unique to Minneapolis.
Right.
But what troubles me is I no longer feel that we live in a just society. I don't know when we lived in a just society, because what I see are people who look at the color of one's skin and say, well, you're a target. And they look at that skin color and say, well, you must have done something wrong. And there's no evidence. There's no evidence that Breonna Taylor did anything wrong. She was sleeping in her bed. So that was such a violent situation, but that woman did not deserve to die. She did not deserve to get shot. You know, George Floyd did not deserve to get choked out. So our starting point is a problem to me. And I want to be optimistic, King. I cannot be optimistic right now.
I'm not optimistic. Honestly, I think people are protesting. What I have seen a little bit differently is like more white people are like DMing, like, hey girl, I appreciate, let me know, I'm thinking about you, all this. Like, there's a lot more of that than what happened in 2016. But quite frankly, I feel like people will protest, will be passionate. In about 3 months, this will be a memory.
Sad.
Yeah.
Real sad.
Thing I'll say, I am a little optimistic. I am in Toronto.
Okay.
And I'll say this problem can't be solved in 3 months because it dates back to 1619. So therefore, you know, I don't think it's going to be solved in my lifetime. If I had to make a comparison, I would say it's like a house that was built back in 1619. And over time, that house has been altered and modified over time, but they're all small level alterations, right? We're talking about maybe moving the counter up to a level where I can use it, maybe widening doors where I can walk through, but it's still in 2020. We're still talking about an old house from 1619. You know, at some point, it ain't going to work. And that's the problem, is that this is the inherent sin of this country. And it bleeds in, not just in policing, but to the financial markets, to real estate, to,
healthcare, education.
Healthcare, name it, education, go down the list, the media. But with that being said, I think we've made a long way. We've made a lot of progress. But I don't think we're ultimately going to make the progress that everyone's seeking until we can have that honest discussion saying this predates all of us. And before we can talk about inequities in our criminal justice system, we have to get to the root, because the root is not the criminal justice system.
Right.
The interesting thing about this is there's a reading, I think everyone, if you have the time, you need to check it out. I haven't had the time this year, but I went to a Georgia Municipal Association training. It was called Municipal Courts Post-Ferguson. And it was a DOJ paper study looking at the Ferguson court system, the city of Ferguson. And it was it analyzed the city of Ferguson after all the racial riots. And what they came to was like, hey, this is some backwater shit here. I mean, you guys are overburdening your Black population with fees and penalties disproportionately. And it's just a mess. I heard if you read it, it's good enough. It's good entertainment by itself. It's sad, but it's true. And I think that's the problem, is that when you look at a lot of these police departments, you know, they have a lot of pride in what they do. They may have body cams, they may have this, that, and the third, and they'll have good training. But the problem still goes deeper than that, right? It's what Adrian said. If you hire shit in, you get shit out. And that comes down to it. The people in Minnesota, look, they have body cameras. I know that was a big thing 4 or 5 years ago, but they had body cameras, right? I found out today, I was reading today, they actually make their officers go through a diversity sensitivity training. We did that in the city of Duluth. All our officers have to go to that training. So when you look at it, it's like they did all the little things, right? But still yet an unarmed Black man was choked to death. So it's bigger than these little things. And again, tie it all back together. If we want to tackle it, we have to tackle the big systematic racism that's part of this country's DNA.
Which that's where, and I liked how he said, like, starting off with it, the hope may not be in our lifetime. Like, just think about, I mean, morbid or not, slaves that, you know, were struggling through their situation. There were several that did not see freedom. And, you know, I feel like maybe I'm a realist, pessimist. I don't know. Call me what you call me. But, like, I've just come to a place where I somewhat accept, like, racism is a part of my society. And how can I make small gains such that, I mean, I think the biggest thing about racism now versus, like, before Trump was in office was this level of shame. Because, like, we all do things that we're a little bit ashamed of, like, hey, COVID, maybe I didn't brush my teeth or take a shower every day. And that's something I feel a little bit ashamed about. So I don't tell people, like, hey, I didn't shower today and I'm offending myself. Like, we don't talk about those things that we are embarrassed or feel shame about. And I feel like that's kind of what racism was at one point, where you had some racist thoughts or biases. You may have, like, thought that they crossed your mind, but you're like, ooh, I can't say that in front of Adrienne because she'll look at me and I'll feel a sense of shame. Versus now, the Donald Trump allows and just kind of accepts and breeds this nature of, like, hey, it's okay to say your racist concept or your racist thought. So it's okay, you know, like you can dog whistle all day long. Don't feel shame about it. It's cool. You've got the national president out here doing it. He's leading the charge. There's good Nazis, like all that type of stuff. And I think that's fundamentally what's a little different right now. Because I don't think racism is ever going to happen. I think it's a part of the human condition to have isms. Like if it's not race, like Africans sold Africans into slavery. People will always find different things to yield power. I think it's always about power and control. So within populations, you will always have that, and race tends to be an easy thing to kind of say, hey, I'm better than you. So I accept that as a part of the human condition. But I think we should be shameful about having those biases and prejudices and enacting and inflicting pain on others based on that. And
I mean, I got to say, on one hand, I agree that there's certain things that we're not going to see in our lifetime, and that this problem has persisted for hundreds of years. So it, sure, kind of crazy to think that we can figure this one out within the next 50 or so years. However, I think when I listen to some of the calls for help, and again, just from what I've heard through the latest with George Floyd, I know that there's more examples. When I hear activists crying out for help, they're not asking for special treatment. They're not even asking that you understand anything about systemic racism. But what they are asking for is that you arrest the officers who did this, you put them in jail, you prosecute them, and you sentence them. You know, and how many times we see people who have committed murders and they get off the hook. And so it's part of our social contract. So if you can't understand the last 400 years, fine, okay? Let me put it to you this way. If we saw a white man get choked out by an officer,
wrap.
It is a wrap, okay? And so I think what I'm hearing right now from others is, I want to be treated fairly. And I don't think you need to have a deep understanding of what that means. I think if you know how a white person would, the justice that would be served if a white man got killed, I think that's what we're asking for here, is like, we want to be treated fairly. And if you created these rules, you need to abide by these rules for everybody, not just for white people.
And that's key, the creation of the rules. We, the voters, put people who either are the rule creators or who appoint those rule creators, and that's why voting is important. If you like, I think the Ahmaud Arbery situation is, historically, we need to really look at what happened there. I don't fully understand, but essentially, like, it was a hot potato situation of DAs saying, I don't want to deal with this. I have a friend of a friend who was in the police society. Like, basically, the guy who killed Ahmaud was friends with the prosecutor, and she was like, I don't want, or the DA, whatever. She was like, I don't want to deal with this because I'm friends and I can't be biased. And then they kept passing that responsibility and accountability on, and that's insanity. It's like, did the man kill him or not? And I can't say whether or not, like at the time, maybe they didn't have all the facts and circumstances. Fair, cool. But one human killed another. Something should have happened. 2 months should not have gone by without, like, can you imagine killing a human being and then sitting on your couch watching football? Like, that's crazy to me. Mm-hmm. Like, you either need counseling or to be in jail. You're not right. You killed a human. You're stupid. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
No, I mean, I think that this is going to continue for a while, and to be realistic, we still have at least 5 months. It's June 1st. We've got at least 5 months. And then even then, hypothetically,
get out of 2020.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
Right?
We're 6 months down. We got 6 more to go.
We're just gonna feel like 6 years.
I don't know what kind of shit to expect next month.
I think I'm with you though, because I think this is the first time in a long time collectively people in the U.S. have felt like we don't know how this is going to play out, and we haven't had this in a long time.
Yeah. Other countries deal with this regularly, but this is something we haven't seen.
We're making America
not in a generation
great.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave this. I'm going to ask you guys all three of you all this question. You all work with the Democrats. The Democrats on paper have more people registered to vote still. You have a growing coalition even before COVID. We don't know what's going to happen next, right? What do you say to people who want this situation with Trump to be over? Like, what do you tell them to get them out to vote? Like, what do you say? Like, what do you do?
Are you better off 4 years ago?
That's very Ronald Reaganish, but okay.
But it's real though. Look, I remember a time where we had a decent guy in the White House. The economy was at 4.7% unemployment. Race relations weren't perfect, but we weren't rioting in the street. And I don't know if Obama could have stopped the pandemic, but he sure as hell would have handled it better. I think part of the messaging needs to be nostalgia. Don't you miss the days where you had a president and you didn't have to worry about it? Like, you just kind of like maybe forgot. Like, you just
like a president should be white noise.
Yeah, when it was just like white noise at the national level.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's it's a good argument because it's not too radical for people, right? I notice radical arguments are kind of foreign for people. Are they going to be scared of the unknown? If you can go back 4 or 5 years and say, man, we were in the good days, weren't we? When you want to go back to that? That guy was his VP. Vote for him. I think that's winning argument.
Okay. Anyone else? You actually gave me another question. I want to open up to anybody else first.
I laugh because it feels honestly, that kind of, isn't that what Trump's like motto was?
Yeah.
Or like when he ran, like the whole nostalgia, make America great again, back to the 50s or wherever. I don't know if he ever clarified. I don't think I think it was clever of him not to necessarily paint a too clear picture, but yeah. I think I have a different perspective, and it's like when you're shaken to the core, to me, like what can we do to change, and how do we go from here? And I don't know if I'm necessarily interested in going back to anything per se. You know, there's some deeply rooted issues in this country that we've talked about tonight, and COVID times racism that has persisted in this country, that combo has really shown its ugly head in a way that we've probably ignored before. And so now when you see it, what do you do about it? I don't want to go back. You know what it was like before COVID? It was maternal mortality, the worst in the country here in Georgia, you know, especially for Black women. You want to go back to that? I don't. So, you know, it's just like there's some real issues here that have shown its ugly head, that we've already seen some of it. It's now worse. So how do we heal? And to me, it is, I agree with Kirkland in terms of leadership. It really does matter who's at the top. And it's a fight, you know. What a luxury to be able to put something in cruise control and be like, well, I don't even know what my president's doing, you know, like I mean, wow, okay, well, you know, those were the days, but you know, here we are. And so, you know, what are we going to do to heal and to get better, and where do we go from here? Because I don't want to go back, because it wasn't rosy before mid-March, excuse me. You know, there's some real issues that I think we've got to fight for in terms of improving.
Yeah. And I'll kind of like, you kind of asked as a Democrat, and I am a Democrat because that's where kind of my personal values land me. But I ultimately, I want people to pay attention. So like, if you genuinely in your heart of hearts land on a Republican side, and I don't believe Trump is Republican or Democrat. So like, when it comes to him, like, no, if you're a Republican and that's your value set, don't vote for Trump, because he's not making anything better. He's not doing anything positive. He doesn't reflect well upon Republicans. So like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I want people to really engage in their their democratic process and take a level of responsibility. Because like, you know, Kirkland as an elected, he will have his own thoughts and ideas, but as a constituent, and this is what I did, like I will call my state rep, state senator and say, hey, this is what I think about this, then other. And I want them to have to reckon with my thoughts, my ideas, and my feelings. And quite honestly, like a frustration point of mine has been everybody's emoting on social media. And, you know, I'm doing it too, but I want to, like, what if we all emoted in our elected people's inboxes? And rather than posting whatever people posted on their Facebook page, they sent that to their state rep or their state senator, especially in these districts that are mostly red. Well, at some point they got to respond to that. Like if only one person does it, then it's like, oh, that's a lone animal. They're just crazy. But if massive amounts of people, then they have to say, oh God, I got to address this because this is what the people that I represent are caring about or talking about. So ultimately, I just want people to get active, and if their value set lands them closer to a Democrat than a Republican, so be it.
Okay. And thank you all for like taking the time out to talk to me tonight. This is really cool, and I appreciate you all just like doing this house party thing. And so that's really all on you, Adrienne, for making that happen.
My house party.
Hey, there we go. You know. So I do want to end on this. How can people get in contact with any one of y'all?
I have my campaign website up, Gwinnett.com. You can always shoot me an email, drop me a line. Google Voice phone numbers up. So yeah, try to be accessible. All my social media goes to my website. So let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is Lady A08 on Twitter or Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Adrienne White. So come holler at me. I like to talk and engage and educate and learn.
And you know what, Adrienne, I haven't been as active on social.
Please don't go. It's crazy. Don't go back. Don't come back in July next year.
Right. But you know, for those who are interested in getting plugged in, and if you ever want like a mentor or someone to have a helping hand, you know, I want to offer that to you. And so I'm going to give you my email address. I don't know how you're going to share this, King, but it's Michelle@MichelleSchreiner.com. Maybe we need to spell that out in your show notes.
I'll spell it in the show notes.
Yeah. But you know, definitely, you know, look, it wasn't that long ago when I thought I had no business being at the state capitol. And then with adequate training and support, you know, now I know the ropes, so to speak. And so I'd like to pass that on. So if you have an interest and if you want, Adrienne, you're always picking up the phone and calling people. If you ever want a helping hand, reach out to me and Adrienne and others. We're here. We want more people to come and lift up these voices. So reach out.
Yep.
All right. Oh, Michelle, you know the drill on this one. You're going to go last, Michelle. So for Adrienne Kirkland, I kind of do this with everyone on the main pod. I don't do it often with the video ones, but Michelle, you know this. I've done this with Michelle at least twice now. What's making y'all happy?
Oh man, being able to slow down and spend time with people you wouldn't have, or just spend more time with people, herself included. My little cousins. I got like 2 cousins that are like 7 months old. So and they're twins. So I like spending time with them. And I don't know if I would have been spending as much time with them if it weren't for the pandemic, if I weren't working from home. I definitely wouldn't have been spending as much time with them because I would have been campaigning. And, you know, not having a primary, having to be forced to stay home because there's no in-person events. That's what I'm most thankful for. That's what's making me happy right now. That and rewatching The Wire.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's been baking bread and watching The Wire. Like this has been an interesting thing that's been happening.
Best show ever made, and probably some of the best art made in the past couple of decades.
All right. I like that.
I echo slowing down. It's been nice, and I did get on a plane and I visited my niece. She turned 1 year old. That was so much fun. Yeah, spending time, like we bike ride. He got a bike and I like dusted mine off, and that's been really nice and relaxing. And yeah. So slowing down, spending time, and he's great at picking TV shows. So
Yeah, I'm king of that. I'm killing that.
he's good.
I can't say I've been slowing down. I've been working a lot with my day job, but I also have some twins of my own, and they turned 14 months this past week.
Cool.
It's crazy. Yeah, they're the joy of my life, a boy and a girl, and they're everything to me. They're pretty cool kids. I'm gonna keep them. I think I'll keep them.
I like it. All right.
What's making you happy, King?
This is gonna sound bad, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I'm happy to see so many like Gen Zs and younger millennials out on the front lines of doing stuff. And I don't mean just like burning shit up. I mean like actually like out there in the protests, getting online, getting engaged in a way that we haven't seen before. That's actually what's making me happy. It's not necessarily something people want to hear, but those kids, they're willing to risk life and limb for that. And I've seen a couple of the kids, unfortunately, one girl, she's probably like 16. She's lost her eye permanently now after getting shot in the face.
Yeah, I saw that.
And just seeing the kids, like there was the one with the young white girl cross the lawn and she jumped in front of her black friend to take, like that level of like, we are for each other is like inspiring in the way that, I just had low expectations and no expectations of people doing that. And to see that these kids are young and just doing it, that's like actually what's making me happy. So there we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. A to-do for you, King, you got to get Adrian and I hooked up on Twitch. So.
All right, you got to get a Twitch name. So we need a Twitch name for both of y'all. Me and Adrian get a Mortal Kombat, and we'll figure it out from there.
All right.
All right, y'all. Once again, if you haven't listened already, please like and subscribe wherever you heard this podcast set. If you heard it on iTunes, make sure you give a really great review. All reviews really help. And also, if you haven't already, please sign up for my newsletter at iamkingwilliams.substack.com. iamkingwilliams.substack.com. You'll actually be getting a great newsletter package that's going to be coming out late tonight, early in the morning. It's going to feature a couple things that you may be interested in. The first is going to be about what's going on in the world of protests. The second is going to be about how to deal with trauma in the protests. And the third is going to be about how we actually got here with the history of police. So if you haven't already, please register at iamkingwilliams.substack.com. Thank you.